Now call to order the July 7th, 2020 meeting of the Gary Common Council. As is our custom, we shall begin our meeting with prayer. Ask that Councilman Brewer offer our prayer.
Shall we pray? Father God, in the name of Jesus, we come to say thank you, O God. We thank you for allowing us to see a day that we have not seen before. We ask that you will bless us in this meeting, O God. Bless us with wisdom and knowledge, O God. Lead and guide us right now, O God. We ask that you bless the people of this great city of Gary, O God. Bless the bereaved families all over, O God. Give them strength, O God. Do it right now in your Son, Jesus' name. We shall be careful to give your name praise. Amen.
Amen. This time we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic,
which we stand,
one
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Here.
Councilman Brewer.
Here.
Councilwoman Brown. Councilwoman Caldwell.
Here.
Councilman Godwin.
Present.
Councilman Lay.
Here.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Here.
Councilman Williams.
Here.
President Brown. Mr. President, there are 7 present, 2 absent.
I want to just observe that Councilwoman Mary Brown does appear to be here. Can we call her name once again?
Councilwoman Brown.
I think you're muted, Councilwoman Brown.
Present.
Mr. President, we have 8 present, 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With 8 members present and 1 absent, we have a quorum to conduct the business of the Gary Common Council. It's come to my attention that the minutes of the previous meeting are not prepared. And so I don't know whether you have any further comment on that, Madam Clerk, but otherwise we will have to approve the minutes of the previous meeting at our July 21st, 2020 meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any issues or concerns with that, Attorney Williams?
None.
Thank you. This time, Madam Clerk, assignment of council pending ordinances and resolutions on first reading.
CPO 2020-30, an ordinance of the Gary Common Council creating the City of Gary Youth Council, sponsored by Linda Barnes Caldwell, Councilwoman of the 5th District.
Boards and commissions.
CPO 2020-33, an ordinance revising 2020 appropriations for the Police Department operating budgets for Fund 220, Fund 227, Fund 254, Fund 710, and Fund 725 for the fiscal year beginning January the 1st, 2020, ending December 31st, 2020. Sponsored by Mayor
Finance.
Trump, City of Gary.
Sorry about that. Finance.
CPO 2020-34, an ordinance establishing the JAG grant budget for the fiscal year 2020, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Finance.
CPO 2020-35, an ordinance revising the STD grant budget for the fiscal year beginning April 1st, 2020, ending March 31st, 2021, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Finance.
CPO 2020-36, an ordinance revising the Indiana Department of Correction grant budget for the fiscal year beginning November the 1st, 2019, ending October 31st, 2020, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Public Finance.
CPR 2020-08, a resolution by the Gary Common Council calling on Indiana Governor Eric Hogan to initiate a more robust and compassionate program for the early release of non-violent incarcerated persons most vulnerable to the COVID-19 pandemic, sponsored by Cozy Weatherspoon, Councilman of the 1st District, Dwight Williams, Councilman of the 6th District.
I'll just correct that, councilman of the 2nd District. Public safety.
Mr. President, that ends assignment of pending ordinances and resolutions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell is recognized.
boards and commissions has before it CPO 2020-30. For the record, I approve this ordinance for reporting out. And I may add, I don't know, Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
okay, Councilman Williams,
Yes.
Mr. President. We have a majority of approval for CPO 2020-30 for reporting out.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown.
the Finance Committee has before it CPO 2020-33. For the record, I approve this ordinance for reporting out to the council. Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
And Councilman Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, a majority of the Finance Committee has approved CPO 2020-33 for reporting out to the council. The Finance Committee has before it CPO 2020-34. For the record, I approve this ordinance for reporting out to the council. Councilwoman Caldwell
Yes.
and Councilman Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, a majority of the Finance Committee has approved CPO 2020-34 for reporting out to the council. Finance Committee has before it CPO 2020-35. For the record, I approve this ordinance for reporting out to the council. Councilwoman Caldwell
Yes.
and Councilman Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, a majority of the Finance Committee has approved CPO 2020-35 for reporting out to the council. Finance Committee has before it CPO 2020-36. For the record, I approve this ordinance for reporting out to the council. Councilwoman Caldwell
Yes.
and Councilman Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, a majority of the Finance Committee has approved CPO 2020-36 for reporting out to the council.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. Councilman Williams.
Yes. Yes.
So you have a CPR 2020-08.
I know I have CPR 2020-8. That's Councilman Weatherspoon. Councilman,
He's the chair of the Public Safety Committee.
okay, I'm sorry. But I would like to have that deferred, please.
Okay. So there's a motion to defer CPR 2020-08.
Yes, Mr. President, I make a motion that we defer this resolution, to the next council meeting.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Councilman Lay is recognized.
The proper motion is not to defer, postpone to a definite time. You postpone it. That's what he's asking to do.
Thank you, Mr. Lay.
Councilman Weatherspoon, will you restate the motion accordingly?
Absolutely. I make a motion that we postpone this to another time, to another meeting.
I think we have to say a specific meeting, so I would say July 21st.
That's perfect. I make a motion that we postpone this resolution to July 21st, our next council meeting.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 8-0, CPR 2020-08 is postponed and will be heard at the July 21st, 2020 meeting of the Gary Common Council. Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
Mr. President, I would like to report out CPO 2020-30.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilwoman Brown.
the Finance Committee would like to report out CPO 2020-33, 2020-34, 2020-35, and 2020-36.
Thank you. That ends our assignment of council pending and ordinances and resolutions on first reading. This time we will have special and select. Are there any members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Atkins is recognized.
thank you. Just have a couple of announcements related to 4th District. So in March of this year, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we were scheduled to have a small business bazaar that was initially scheduled to be indoors. So we have a local proprietor in the 4th District who has volunteered space outside for us to reinstate that initiative. So anyone who's interested, if you have crafts, if you have vegetables that you want to sell appropriately, you're appropriately licensed to do so, we are looking to hold a small business bazaar on August the 8th, which is a Saturday. If you are interested in participating in that, please reach out. We have a couple of weeks to kind of get everything formalized, but we do at least want to start tracking those business owners that will be interested in participating. So please contact my administrative assistant, Ms. Karen Lane, at 219-881-1315. And again, that particular event is tentatively scheduled for August the 8th, which is a Saturday. I also wanted to let the 4th District residents know in the following precinct, we did have an issue. As some of you guys know, we have started our community cleanups and dumpster days in the 4th as of last month, the second week, I think, or third week in June. This past weekend, we did have an issue. The dumpsters were not ordered for those particular locations that was on schedule for this past weekend. Those locations are located in precincts G423 as well as G410. And I will state those particular locations out loud as well. So 10th Avenue in Garfield, 11th in Pierce, 13th in Leakin, 17th Avenue in Cleveland, 17th in Hayes, the 1400 block of West 17th Avenue. So we did submit that information to Constituent Services, but for some reason, those dumpsters were not ordered. I did want the residents to know that I was able to directly connect to the Republic representative myself, and we did get those dumpsters out on location yesterday. And so you all will have your dates from yesterday, which was July the 6th until July 9th. And then also for those residents who are in the East Side Phase 2, which is scheduled for this upcoming week, which starts on the 9th until the 13th, those are locations in area G425 and G416. I have directly confirmed with you guys so that we do not have that issue like we did this past weekend with those particular locations. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Atkins. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I certainly hope that this doesn't conflict with Councilwoman Atkins. I got this from the Love Your Block for cleanup in the 3rd District, this particular area of July 9th through the 13th. And it was my understanding that they would have dumpsters at 17th and McKinley, 13th and Rutledge, and 17th and Roosevelt Street from July 9th through the 13th. I don't know if that would create an issue with Councilwoman Atkins because she said that she had dumpsters on the 9th as well, so I don't know. But these are the dates that Love Your Block gave to me, so I'm not sure.
Mr. President, if I may.
Yes.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
So Councilwoman Brown, you're fine. I made sure that I knew of your dates and your locations. So when I talked to the representative myself, I made sure that you were okay as well.
Oh, okay, so fine. So then we have dumpsters for July 9th through the 13th at 17th and McKinley Street, 13th and Rutledge Street, and 17th and Roosevelt Street.
Yes,
July 16th through the 20th at 11th and Wilson Street, 9th and Stevenson Street, and 4272 West 21st Avenue, that's in Terrytown. So those 3 dates, those two, those are the dates for the 3rd District for dumpsters for cleanups, and that's from the Love Your Block. So if anybody has any questions, they can contact My assistant, Ms. Karen Lane, at 881-1315. And I also want to take this opportunity to extend condolences to my friend's family, Francis Hightower, who passed away yesterday. And I want to extend condolences to the family of Miss Glenette Richards, who passed away this morning. So I want to extend condolences to those two families. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. Other members for special and select?
Councilman,
Councilman Williams is recognized.
I would like to announce the Morningside Historical District. They are having a community meeting at 104 Morningside. It's going to be in the rear of the house this Saturday, July 11th from 10 a.m. Until the meeting ends. I will have, being that we just got a code enforcement officer for the Morningside area, and I believe I'm sharing that officer with you, correct?
That's
In the
correct.
first district? Okay.
That's correct.
So he is going to be there as well, so I can introduce him, and we'll see if we can get some of these issues handled within the Morningside area.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilman Williams. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell is recognized.
good evening. Boards and Commission has a opening on the Economic Development Board. Our person has resigned because she relocated. So this week creates a vacancy. If you're interested in becoming our representative for the Economic Development, please send your letter of interest along with a resume to City of Gary, Gary Common Council, 401 Broadway, Suite 209. Attention, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell. And we will be accepting letters of interest up until the 21st of July. Also, the 5th District has their first community forum. The topic will be absentee voting. It will be July the 14th at 2 p.m. We have Roosevelt Pavilion, 2145 Harrison Street, and we also will be using Zoom. The Zoom meeting ID and password can be received if you call the council office at 219-881-1315, or you can call in, and that call-in number is 212-626-6799. So that's July the 14th, 2020 at 2 p.m. at Roosevelt Pavilion, 2145 Harrison Street. Our guest speaker will be Michelle Feynman from the Election Board, and she will be explaining the whole concept of absentee voting, because this past election, we had a lot of people that didn't turn in the absentee ballots, didn't know the proper procedure and everything. So she's going to explain everything to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
Councilwoman Caldwell, the person who, the opening that we have for economic development, is that a Republican or a Democrat? Or does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Councilman Weatherspoon is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. President, a couple of things. First, I would like to offer my congratulations to the most newest recruits of the Gary Fire Department. As you are aware, yourself and a couple of other colleagues had an opportunity to go out to a simulated final training for their graduation, I believe it was. So I want to offer my congratulations to those gentlemen and becoming, Gary firefighters. Also, I would like to offer my congratulations to, I think it's approximately 10 firefighters, Gary firefighters, of which are retiring. 2 of them happen to be very good friends of mine. So again, thank you, gentlemen, for your service, and enjoy your retirement. And for you new gentlemen, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Councilman Weatherspoon. Any other members for special and select? Councilman Brewer is recognized.
Thank you. The Gary Economic Development Corporation Workforce Opportunity has a couple of job openings that's coming up. You can come to the Gary Chambers this Wednesday through this Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The first job here is several companies in Northwest Indiana are looking for janitorial services at a rate of $12 an hour. Must have 1 to 3 years of experience in cleaning and sanitizing buildings, surface bathrooms, and etc. The second one is taking applications for Etzel Manufacturing. Must be at least 18 of age, be approved a resident of Gary resident, have reliable transportation. You also can come to the Gary Council Lounge this Wednesday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And please see Ms. Diana Sandling, who is over on the EDC Workforce Development. And her telephone number is 219-741-8568. That's 219-741-8568. Anytime I get these opportunities from Ms. Sandling to let us know about any job opportunities, I will be presenting them to this body, which everyone should have a copy of those too. And we'll make sure we put those on the council page also. There was one other one, but that took place on today. I'm going to see if they're going to allow extension to take place on that one. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer.
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
Thank you. I neglected to say something important. We are on Thursday, day after tomorrow, July 9th, there's going to be a drive-by honk and wave. I don't know if I can say that. Never mind.
Okay.
Mr.
Any
President,
other members for Councilman Williams is recognized.
I also need to make one last statement. I want to send out my condolence to Mary Williams, which is one of my precinct committee persons, for the loss in her family, and as well to Stephanie Miller. She is my vice. Mother passed away some time ago, and the funeral is coming up. Actually, I think the funeral was today. So,
Thank you, Councilman Williams. Any other members for special and select?
And Mr. President,
Councilman Weatherspoon.
yes, I would like to make the council aware of a situation that Attorney Williams and I are working on. This, of course, involves the towing subcommittee. The towing committee. There was a young lady that approached me maybe a couple of weeks ago in reference to a vehicle she was attempting to retrieve from one of our contracted tow agencies, the tow for the city, of course. And the problem that she ran into were her vehicle was not accessible to her over the weekend. And based upon the ordinance, which is Ordinance 9159, passed in 2018, that ordinance states that those businesses should gain or allow accessibility to vehicles, provided that individuals have the release. Those vehicles should be accessible 7 days a week from the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. And this business was only open to 5 o'clock p.m. on a Friday. So Attorney Williams, if you want to chime in, it is something that we're working on and pretty much wanted to make sure that the council is aware of it.
Nothing really to add, Councilman, only that I believe you intend to, at some point, have a committee meeting to discuss the ordinance in its totality.
Well, Attorney Lay, you are still the chair of that committee. How should we proceed with that?
Well,
Councilman.
yes, Mr. President, as I understand, Mr. Witherspoon, it was not going to necessarily be a meeting of the committee. There was going to be negotiations, is what you informed me, between you, Mr. Williams, and the towing people. Y'all were going to have some kind of negotiation meeting. So at that point, I indicated, I did talk to the president. I indicated to you, if you're talking about negotiating under this ordinance, it would be something I'm not aware how you do it. I suggested that you set in for me.
Mr. Chair.
Attorney Williams.
Yeah, so I'm very clear. That was never my understanding, and nor an assertion made by me of an attempt to negotiate. I have no idea where that came from.
Came from this, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'll tell you where it came from.
Well, again, it was my understanding, and it is my recommendation now and then that they convene a meeting of the towing committee to discuss the issue among the committee. It was never my intent for any one council person to deal with this alone.
Councilman
Again,
Lay?
yes, I'm not disturbed about it, but I can tell you exactly where it came from. Councilman Witherspoon, I'm sure he can hear me. And in other words, that was indicated to me that the two of you would be doing that. I don't know the accuracy of it. First of all, if the ordinance said they're supposed to be open 7 days a week, that's it. In other words, we have passed an ordinance, and the enforcement of that ordinance lies in the executive branch. If they have a problem with that, they first of all should contact the executive branch. That's where they signed the contract. And I would assume at that point, the executive branch, if they felt they had a good reason to somehow change this ordinance, they would come to us. It wouldn't be where the committee would start functioning. As I understand, they didn't sign a contract with us. They signed it with the executive branch. So that's where it should start.
Mr. Chair.
Attorney Williams?
Yeah, this will be my last comment on it. The ordinance was created by the Common Council. It was former Councilman Herb Smith who initiated the revision of the most recent ordinance, not that of the executive branch. Of course, they did the procedural due process of bringing it to the council, but it was Councilman Herb Smith who sponsored and sought the amendment to that ordinance. Again, just so we're clear, it was my recommendation that we have this committee meeting because it's not as simple as Mr. Lay understands it. There were issues that the city were not conducting certain things in order. They weren't properly giving out releases. They weren't giving releases in a timely fashion. So there were several issues, which was why I suggested that we have a committee meeting so all that can be fleshed out. The city would have an opportunity to hear the issues and have the ability to rebuff any concerns that are not valid. Again, this did stem from, as Councilman Witherspoon stated, a call that he received, and then he called me asking my opinion of the ordinance. At that time is when I suggested that it had become an issue and we should convene with a committee meeting. How the council chooses to proceed, of course, is up to the council.
Mr. President, this is my last comment. Everyone should take a look at Indiana Code 36-4-5-3. It's very specific in there who enforces ordinances, period. So somehow I would assume the towing people had to sign a contract. They did not sign a contract, even with the wisdom of Mr. Smith, with the council. He simply passed an ordinance. That ordinance would have directed the administration to enforce it. So whatever is there should be enforced by the administration. I think we're moving across from legislative government into executive government. I would suspect if there's a problem with the ordinance, that ordinance should first be discussed with the executive branch. And then after that, they should make some kind of recommendation to the legislative branch to consider changing it or leaving it as it is.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Councilman Brewer?
I am aware of the situation here, and the problem is that the administration is not doing their part too. That's why the conversation came up about having a meeting with the towing committee to bring everyone together, because there's things that the administration is not doing with the enforcement of people getting their release in a timely fashion, let alone that the towing company is not releasing the vehicles once they do get released. So that was the reason for the towing committee coming together and bringing all parties together at that time.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer. I'd like to make a motion, or making a motion, to add Councilman Witherspoon to the towing committee. The current members of the towing committee are Councilman Lay as chair, myself, and Councilman President Michael Brown. Is there a second?
President,
second.
Councilman Weathers, it's been moved and properly seconded to add Councilman Weatherspoon to the towing committee. Questions or discussion?
My only suggestion would even to go further to make Mr. Witherspoon the chairman of that committee.
I'd like to revise my motion accordingly. I move that Councilman Weatherspoon be added as chair of the council's towing committee. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk?
Muted.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown, Councilwoman Brown,
She's muted.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 8-0, Councilman Weatherspoon is added to the towing committee as chair.
Mr.
Thank you.
President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
I would just make acknowledgement to the new committee list there that it revised a new date with the change also.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman Brewer. And please, our office manager, Vanessa Williams, take note, and we will circulate that revised committee list to all relevant parties post haste. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President, I have 3 items,
Councilman Lay is recognized.
two rather small. I now am pretty much familiar with, I put everything on my private phone. So I'd appreciate if everyone, including staff, would now send information to my email. We will make that available. I do not have a city email because I'm using my personal phone. Initially, I was asking them to do it in one direction. Now I would appreciate if I could get it also. Every once in a while, I miss things. I'd like to somewhat piggyback on what Councilwoman Linda Barnes-Caldwell discussed, and that was this voting in November, well, I should say registration in November and absentee ballots. Trinity Baptist Church, which is under the leadership of Dwight Gardner, along with Councilman Ron Brewer and myself, we have purchased and are now putting up signs indicating people can call a very specific number and people will help them with registration as well as help them acquire applications for absentee ballots. The number they should call is 219-883-2720. 219-882-2720. If they call that, they will get assistance in registering the vote as well as picking up absentee ballot applications. As of today, I had a fairly long conversation with Councilwoman Linda Caldwell after I received a letter she had sent out. It is clear to me that the most powerful committee in the council is under Indiana Code 36-4-6-21, which is the investigative committee. As I understand, Mr. President, and again, this is just one person's opinion. If you're being advised otherwise, I can understand it, that you had sent out questions. I don't think anyone can go around the chair of that committee other than if the committee itself took a vote. And I assume that vote would have to be in a council meeting. I believe you are there 2 different ways. One way, for sure, because you're acting president, which means you're ex officio, but it does not give you greater powers than the chairman. If the chairman of that committee says that there will be no investigation, and I'm not saying it should or should not be, but if the chair of that committee says there should be no investigation, then I don't see how you can send out questions. Even if there was going to be an investigation, all of those questions would have to go through the chair. You couldn't, 9 councilmen cannot, well, 8, I guess, couldn't act independent of the chair of that committee. And that committee is so structured. It's the only committee is laid out in statutory law in Indiana that I'm aware of for second-class cities. Exactly, gives us subpoena powers, gives us all kind of powers in order to control the actions of the executive. Initially, when this issue about looking at the chief of the fire department came up, I indicated if the people complaining had been injured in any way, they should go to the fire commission. If not there, they should go to EEOC. If not there, the Indiana Civil Rights Commission. I do not believe this should come to the council, although I do remember Attorney Williams, and if I'm misquoting them, I apologize, saying that we can investigate anything, but it has to have some rationale for the investigation. I sent the entire council a communication indicating that it should be exclusively the investigative committee. Of course, Mr. Chairman, you want to make it the committee of the council as a whole. In that case, we pretty soon will make every committee of the whole. I also indicated if you did it, it would have to be kept confidential. I'm not sure what you would do with it, but if you involved 8 people, if they told one other person in confidence, you'd have 16. If that moved, that figure would get astronomical. So again, I would suggest we follow the wisdom of the chair and we do nothing with this investigation, and that any questions you have sent forward are null and void because the chair did not approve them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Any other members for special and select? I'll respond in turn. Point well taken, Councilman Lay and Councilwoman Barnes-Caldwell. I will simply resubmit my questions, not through the investigations committee, but in my role as a citizen and member of the council. So the same questions will be sent, but not going through the investigations committee. And of course, the administration will have the right, as they always do, to answer or not answer those questions.
Mr. President, in other
Councilman
words,
Lay is recognized.
you're indicating to the administration that you're not invoking 36-4-5-3. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, in other words, you're sending that in. If the mayor wants to answer, he can answer.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. I agree.
If he doesn't, he doesn't.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
All right. Thank you. I have a few announcements. I know we've kind of had a long special and select, but I wanted to give everyone else a chance before going through mine. First of all, the first district will have its first community forum. We will be using Zoom. We'll be discussing public safety, beach patrol, recycling and Lake Street improvements, as well as the census. Our special guests will include Police Chief Evans, Detective Simon Lilly, Mr. Dan Vicari of the Gary Sanitary District, and Ms. Penelope Love, who will be discussing the census with us. We know that currently there's been some articles that have shown that Gary is one of the lowest in the region in terms of our response rate to the census. And we know that the census is so vitally critical to our funding, and we must do the census. So if you have churches that are listening, individuals, make sure that you have done it and that you encourage neighbors, friends, family, church members, colleagues to also do the census. It's very easy. The Zoom call-in number will be 312-626-6799. You can also call the council office at 219-881-1315, which will give you the further instructions to be able to log on to Zoom for our community meeting, which will be July 16th. Next Thursday, July 16th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. We also received a letter from the Blind Social Center, which is noting that they have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. They want to give everyone an update about their current status. They are operating remotely now from 5110 Madison Street in Gary, Indiana, where they started. They're in the process of negotiating a new location that may not be in the city of Gary by choice and not by force. It has been their desire to operate, to plant good seeds in Gary. They're sharing this information with us, the council, and the mayor, hoping that we will make provisions to assist them with a location to operate from temporarily until their new facility is built. to ensure that they are never displaced again. They are requesting donations to the Blind Social Center. They can be reached at 219-980-0097. They also have a website, theblindSocialCenter.org. So that's a message we got from the Blind Social Center, which we know they do a lot of great work in our community. Furthermore, I'm following up on Councilman Brewer's very helpful announcements around employment opportunities. We also know that Alliance Steel, which is one of our newest steel-making companies in town, is hiring. You can go to their website, www.alliancesteel.net, for details and applications. They're located right at the intersection of 12 and 20 and I-65. So, of course, we always want to encourage job opportunities that are available. That ends my special and select. Any other members for special and select? All right, seeing none. Council pending ordinances and resolutions on third and/or final reading.
CPO 2020-31, an ordinance establishing new funds and budgets for the Safe and Thriving Communities Grant, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Darien.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-31 on third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Questions and discussion.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown.
I move to amend by substitution CPO 2020-31.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded to amend by substitution CPO 2020-31. Is there an overview?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Lay.
tell me where I can do this. I want to request that this ordinance be sent back to committee.
So
I received something dated July the 6th. I think that, again, telling 8 members and 9 members of the council to review it and call individually and ask questions. Again, we seem to be operating outside of the committee structure. In other words, I'm not sure when they discovered that it was incorrect, but to give it to us with less than 24 hours, or at best 24 hours before a meeting, I think it should go back. We take a look at it and we be very clear. We started out where we could only do things by substitution. Then it was amended. We could do it by deletion, insertion, possibly a blank. Then it was said, no, we could even do it a fourth way. We can just orally change stuff on the floor and let the president and the clerk, correct it and the mayor sign it later. So I would move this be sent back to the committee.
been moved. Is there a second?
There's a motion on the floor.
We have an existing motion. Our parliamentarian keep us in line here. So
I believe this motion takes precedent, but I'm not going to.
Right,
I think Councilman Lay is correct.
right.
Because if it's going to be sent back to committee, then it can be, and if it's not, then we would go forward with the overview.
Right.
Is there a second to move CPO 2020-31 to or back to the Finance Committee? There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell to move CPO 2020-31 to the Finance Committee. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. President, I would just like to hear what
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
I just would like to know what the amendment was.
Councilman.
It may be something so
Am I
small.
correct?
Chief of Staff is recognized.
Okay. This particular ordinance had attached to it a budget sheet that had the salary amounts that were a part of the salary ordinance all coming out of the grant. The salaries for the positions in this particular grant are split. There are some, a portion of the salaries are actually in the police department, and a much lesser amount are in the grant. So that's what the substitution was.
So why wasn't this provided during the committee meeting?
It was after the committee meeting that I discovered it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer. Any other questions or discussion?
Mr. President, a further statement. I think within Mr. Brewer's question, either he didn't read the new amendment that came through on July the 6th.
No, I didn't. I just received it.
All I want to do is now give you time rather than see, I knew this was going to start up once we started doing stuff from the floor where we make changes after the meeting. I think it's absolutely improper. I understand it may have been done by the Karen Freeman Wilson administration and that council for 8 years, simply mean they were doing it wrong for 8 years, in my opinion. And the only reason I say that, I'm over the open door committee. I'm not going to argue whether it's an open door violation, but inside of your question is the problem. In other words, you don't know, and all you know is what she's now told you verbally.
Well, I'm looking at it, Mr. And I just want her to do the overview any other time. But what I will say, whether it was under Karen Freeman Wilson or Mayor Jerome Prince, if it's something I feel that we can move forward with, where there's amendment being brought on the floor, I will vote for it. If not, I will vote for it to go back to committee. And in this instance here, I will see why we would send it back to committee. But going forward, if I feel that there's something that we can amend on the floor, move forward, I will vote in affirmative and move forward with it. I wouldn't want to hold things up for some of the smallest things.
And this is my last comment, and I know I'm taking I'm not sure what's small in the law. I really am. I know people keep saying it's small, large, big. I'm for 47 years, I haven't been able to figure out what's small. If in any way it changes the law, it's big. It's major if it makes any kind of change to the law. And that's what ordinances are. They're laws. We're changing it. We're adding something. Any way that's done, I think that's major, in my opinion.
Okay.
Councilwoman Brown?
Well, my motion is that CPO 2020-31 be sent back to the Finance Committee.
So I think that we've already had that motion made and seconded.
I don't think so. Okay.
I think
Okay.
Councilman Lay made the motion and Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell seconded it.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions and discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-31 is referred back to the Finance Committee.
CPO 2020-32, an ordinance establishing a new fund for the Human Resources Department to use for wellness credits received from AIM Medical Trust, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown?
I move for passage of CPO 2020-32 on third and final reading.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. We have the overview at this time.
Mr. President,
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Councilwoman
President.
Brown?
I move that CPO 2020-32 be amended by substitution.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that CPO 2020-32 be amended by substitution. Any questions or discussions?
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay is recognized.
I won't take a lot of time. All arguments that I used for 2020-31 are valid for 2020-32. The same deficiencies are here.
Okay.
We received it on July the 6th. I mean,
May I say something, Mr. President?
Councilman Lay, are you finished?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I will be there. I mean, I think it's deficient. We sent 31 back. Let's send 32 back.
Attorney Colvin is recognized.
Councilman Lay and other council members, this particular ordinance is a little different than the other one because what was deficient in this ordinance was actually discussed at the Finance Committee meeting. I indicated at the Finance Committee meeting that this ordinance was missing a fund number, and that's what we put, that's what has been corrected.
And may I just ask, where is the fund number that was corrected?
We added, it's Fund 793, Department 0793. That wasn't on the original ordinance.
Okay, I think so we must have, the one I'm looking at must be dated.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so it seems like this was a scrivener's error. I'm not going to get into small and large.
Mr. Chair,
Councilman Williams is recognized.
what was, you said it was a minute to fund, which fund number was it?
Attorney Colvin.
Fund number is 793. The department number is 0793.
And where on the document would those be inserted? Or where
It's on
those
the
inserted?
front page. The document that I sent yesterday has it on the front page.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion on the table that's been moved, and was it seconded?
Yes.
Okay, it was moved and properly seconded to refer this ordinance back to the Finance Committee. Any other questions or discussion about that? I will just say that I do think, I don't want to get into small and large, but I do think that this matter does not carry the same substantive weight. I'm not saying it's unimportant, but does not carry the same substantive weight as the previous ordinance. And so I don't want it to appear that I'm voting differently about the same thing. I think there is a distinction with a difference between these two ordinances. That's just my personal opinion. Any other members, questions or discussion on the motion that's on the table?
I would like to, I'm sorry, go ahead. I yield to Mr. Williams.
Attorney Williams is recognized.
I didn't yield my attorney license. I just, oh, that was Attorney Williams. I'm sorry. I thought it was Dwight Williams. I'm sorry.
No, it was Dwight Williams. That was
I'm
not
sorry.
Attorney Williams.
I'm sorry. Councilman Williams is recognized.
That's what I thought it was.
Sorry about that. Councilman Williams?
Yeah, I asked what I wanted to know about the amendment for Fund 73, Department 093. That was what all I really wanted to know.
Okay.
I didn't request anything else.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
thank you. And that's why I think it's so important that we still have an overview, even though motion comes up on the floor to send it back to committee. I think sometime the overview can clear up some of the mishaps that may be inside. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you, Councilman Brewer. Attorney Williams is recognized.
while in theory I agree with Councilman Brewer, but the motion takes precedent. You have to vote on the motion first. And that is whether it's going to be sent back to committee.
Thank you, Attorney Williams. Any other questions or discussion? I'd just like to ask Attorney Colvin, is this particular ordinance, I mean, I know is it urgent? I mean, I know we have insurance bills and other things that we're trying to reduce our costs. Is there a sense of urgency around not waiting 2 more weeks to reconsider this legislation?
I don't think there's a sense of urgency, but I'm not sure what I could add in a committee meeting, other than the fact that I added the department number, which I've already discussed. So I'm not sure what else I would even say.
Attorney Colvin, if I could, this is
Mr. Pohl is recognized.
Thank you, Councilman. This ordinance is, without getting into the overview, the entire the entire premise of this ordinance is that we can establish a fund to receive funds to actually pay vendors that we already owe. So I guess on the issue of urgency, I know that this is, I wouldn't say that it's life or death, but I would think that these vendors are definitely expecting that these funds come through sooner than later. So I don't know if what 2 weeks means to a vendor, but I know that in the business world that does mean something. So
Thank you, Mr. Pohl. Any other questions and discussion about the motion to refer this ordinance back to the Finance Committee? Seeing none, was there someone?
Councilman Williams,
Councilman Williams is recognized.
if the corrections were made at the committee level, why are we still holding on to this?
I'm in agreement with you. I think you offer a rhetorical question
Well-
and suggests that the issue has been resolved or is resolvable.
Yes.
So,
We just go for
Councilman
the vote.
Brewer,
Well, we move forward to vote. If we want to send it back to committee, we vote to
Right.
send it back. We don't vote to send it back to committee, and we take a vote on third and final.
absolutely. Councilman Lay is recognized.
No, that's fine. I would, if it does not go back to committee, I would like to preference my vote. Prior to you calling for the vote, give me an opportunity to preference my vote if it does not go back to committee.
Okay. Thank you. So I don't see any other questions or discussions. So at this time, we will have a roll call vote on whether this ordinance will go back to the Finance Committee. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
No.
Councilwoman Brown,
No.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
No.
Councilman Williams,
No.
President Godwin.
No.
Mr. President, the vote is 3 yes, 5 no.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With 3 yes and 5 no, CPO 2020-32 is not referred back to the Finance Committee and remains under consideration for third and final reading. I think we've already had a motion and a second to pass this matter on third and final, and so I think at this point we'll proceed with the overview.
Mr. President,
Attorney Colvin is recognized.
this ordinance establishes a new fund and department number for wellness credits that we'll be receiving from the AIM Medical Trust. These dollars that we'll be receiving will be used to actually fund wellness programs for city employees.
Thank you, Attorney Colvin. Any questions or discussion?
Before you call for the vote, I'd like to preference it.
Councilman Lay is recognized.
First thing, I would suggest to everybody to look up the definition of scribbler's error. I believe you will find that has to do with a contractual agreement, has nothing to do with the passing of law. It's very narrow how that is applied. Again, so I will be consistent. It is my intent not to allow the administration to bring items within, 24 hours. I believe we would have had a committee meeting. I want to say, I may be wrong on this. It would have been somewhere around the 23rd of June. So they had ample opportunity to get in time to get this to us, as opposed to giving it to us on July 6th. Unfortunately, I didn't get it until they sent it out, but it's because of my email problem. I didn't receive it, so I didn't get an opportunity to read it, so I have not read it either. So based upon that, I will not abstain. I will vote no on anything that I think is not properly before this council. So my vote will be no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Any other questions or discussion? I will say that I agree in part and disagree in part with what I view as a myopic understanding of scrivener's error. It certainly can be used to describe corrections, in my understanding, beyond contracts. And I know I did use that phrase, and I believe it applies also to any ordinance or any legal document. But great minds can sometimes disagree. Any other questions or discussion?
No, Mr. President, I just want
Councilwoman
to
Brown?
say, I just wanted to say that we had this ordinance on the agenda at the Finance Committee meeting. And I thought that it was important that, that staff be able to, why would we hold staff back who want to go for wellness? I mean, who need to have some wellness training or some things that they need to do in order, for wellness. And I just don't think that we need to hold this back. I think we need to let them go and have this wellness training. I think it's important. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. President, this vote is on the amendment.
Yes.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Same.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
No.
Councilman Lay,
No.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 5 yes, 2 noes, and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With 5 yes, 2 noes, and 1 abstention, the amendment by substitution to CPO 2020-32 passes. At this point, we will need a motion to pass CPO 2020-
There's already a motion.
Okay, so we already have that in second. So at this point, we will call for any, we don't need another overview, I don't think, but any questions or discussion about the ordinance as amended. Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Same.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
No.
Councilman Lay,
No.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 5 yes, 2 noes, and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. 5 yeas and 2 nays and 1 abstention. CPO 2020-32 as amended passes and is so ordered.
CPR 2020-07, a declaratory resolution of the Common Council of the City of Gary, Indiana, designating that a certain area of the City of Gary be established as the Broadway Lofts Economic Revitalization Area, to which deductions from assessed value may be requested by an applicant to the Common Council of the City of Gary, pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-12.1, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Councilman Michael A. Brown at large, City of Gary, Indiana Redevelopment Commission, and the City of Gary, Indiana Office of Community Investment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilman Brewer is recognized.
Mr. President, I move for passage of CPR 2020-07.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. We have
Mr.
the,
President.
who spoke?
Councilman Brewer, sorry.
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
I move for a motion for substitution of CPR 2020-07.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded to amend by substitution CPR 2020-07. Any questions or discussion at this point?
I'd like to have the overview for the amendment at this time, Mr. President.
Okay. We'll have the overview on what exactly is being amended. That will come from Mr. Pohl.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Hold on a second. I'm trying to pull this up. I just lost it now. 1 second. Okay, here it is. Yeah, I just the only changes that we had actually made as far as the ordinance went since the last council meeting within this ordinance. I'm sorry, within the CPR, the declaratory resolution, was the legal description that had gone in under Exhibit A of the declaratory resolution. I believe that was the only. I believe that was the only substantive change to it. I know that there was some formatting changes that were made by, or that were made as well. I should state. I should note for the record that Councilwoman Atkins had contacted me yesterday about sponsorship. I'll defer to the Councilwoman about any issues with that as the declaratory resolution as presented. I see that she's on there as a sponsor, but I did want to make that notice for the record. So, Councilwoman Atkins, if you did have anything to add, I'd defer to you.
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Atkins?
So I really didn't, but I can just relay my thoughts. So I did send notification to Attorney Pohl yesterday, I think it was, to remove my name from a sponsor of this particular resolution. And just so the reason being, at the time last week, between the time we've had our committee meeting up until today, there's been a lot of conversation between this community benefits agreement, the ordinance, that organization who was involved with putting that in place last year. Also, my interaction with MVH Partners, there was a number of concerns that we had individually, and I think some of the other colleagues on the council also had expressed that in terms of adhering to the CBA, also adhering to the local ordinance. All of this is important, even though this is the declaratory portion of it, that we should consider now, knowing in fact that this particular entity will come back for the confirmation resolution as well for the actual tax abatement side of it. So I think it's important for the body to address that now, to make sure that we agree if we're going to make sure that this developer adhere to the CBA requirements or not. And if so, are we going to make a motion for them not to adhere to that? Because that was a big piece of the conversation that we've had over the last couple of weeks. As it relates to my interest and my wanting to be removed from the sponsorship, I was waiting for feedback on a number of questions that I had sent to the developer that I did receive after that email went out. But my concern also is in terms of the outlook. Like, if we can get some information from the city, this particular resolution is sponsored by the Community Investment Department, but I don't think anyone from Community Investment has even addressed the council in terms of why they want us to support it. So that would be nice if we could, get some type of interaction in their regards and understand what is the vision for that area. We know this particular developer is going to come back for phase 2 and phase 3. So that was a part of my wanted to be removed until I got comfortable understanding the involvement that they will want us to do in terms of phase 2 and phase 3. And then also getting some feedback from the city on that regard in terms of strategy and involving the CBA components. So I don't know if anybody wants to address that. I'm not sure if I was by myself in terms of council members being concerned about that. But since it is an ordinance that's in play, we should at least make sure that we get responses related to that.
I will just say that I am in full agreement with Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
And we've had extensive conversations about community benefits. I am going to open up the public portion to allow Carolyn McCready of the 1st District to talk a little bit about the community benefits agreement and concerns vis-a-vis this project. But I certainly share the concerns that Councilwoman Atkins has wisely raised. I do know that what we do now is not the end all to this matter, in that in 2 weeks we will consider, I believe, a confirmatory resolution, correct me if I'm wrong, which kind of seals the deal in some ways. I'm also equally mindful of the timing, the timetable that is before us. And I want to ensure that we do have development. We don't want to appear to be, or in fact be, obstructionists when it comes to people doing development in the city. But I think that's a two-way street. I think that it's incumbent upon the administration to properly prepare and inform developers about what our laws are. Certainly, we know the CBA did come into play at the last council meeting of 2019, but those who are seeking to develop here should not find out, when it gets to this point where we're considering legislation. They should know early, as soon as possible, that this is something that's going to be asked of them. But that's my thought on it. And are there any other? Are you finished, Mr. Pohl, with your overview? I didn't want to.
Yes, I mean, as far as the changes, as far as the changes go, those were the only two changes. But I did want to make sure that Councilwoman Atkins did have her the ability to speak to the issues that she had brought up.
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Brown.
It is my understanding that there is nothing in this ordinance resolution, I should say, that has anything to do with the CBA agreement. I don't think they addressed it at all. And so Councilwoman Atkins is correct. I mean, we need to make sure that the CBA agreement is a part of whatever it is that they're doing or whatever it is they're asking us to do in terms of this resolution. So I agree with Councilwoman Atkins. We do need to do that.
And Mr. President, if I may,
Councilwoman Atkins.
I wanted to be clear that I am for development, redevelopment, revitalization of the city. It's needed. But as a body, we have to make sure that we are doing due diligence, as you will, to our roles, and making sure that whatever we can do in our positions to create some type of not authority, but at least to bring what the knowledge base that we have to the table to ensure that the developers at least are knowledgeable about it and that they are trying to implement that. And then we also have to have the support from the administrations to make sure that they are the executors of the ordinances that we have from a local hiring ordinance perspective, as well as the CBA. So I want to make sure that, again, like to your point, it's not a hindrance. It's to make sure that we're aligned as a council, that we get some feedback from community investment, and that we understand how are they going to incorporate these particular aspects of the ordinance to the benefit of the community.
Well, Mr. President,
Brown.
Last year, we went through this through this CBA, and it is my understanding that the council agreed that this is something that we needed to do. So I don't understand why it is not a part of this resolution. Should have been a part of it.
Mr. President.
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
One thing I said about the CBA, and I probably was one of the council members that held out the longest on being a supporter of the CBA, I want to make sure that the incoming administration was supportive of the CBA.
All right, okay.
And that we do not run into this problem here. And we have not heard from the administration where their stance are at on the CBA. And it seems like this is a sticking point for this body here with the CBA, with the council. At that time, all council members did vote for the CBA. I know there are a couple of things also that should have been amended. I heard it in the clerk's overview for our sponsorship, where Michael A. Brown should have been removed and myself should have been there. At that time, I requested myself and Ty Atkins be put there, and she just requested that she not be put there. So I did not hear that in the overview either. I don't know if we can hammer all of this out. We basically have taken the council meeting and turned it into a committee meeting, sounds like. There's a number of concerns so far from council members. I don't know how many more concerns the council members do have. But I am willing to hear what the rest of the body pleasure is. And if I have to, I'll take this back to committee and request that you hold a special meeting on this, council meeting on it, for a third and final if we have to.
Mr. President.
Councilman Lay is recognized.
I'm not going to pretend to be as knowledgeable as the rest of the council seems to be on this, but I received a blank document from Miss Carolyn McCready, and I was very unclear what that document was about. She indicated destroy all previous documents, and we would move with an unsigned document. Again, I'm not going to pretend that I know all that you guys are discussing and know, and I'm sure that may come to some of you surprise, but I just absolutely do not want to see a $11 million project held up because, as I understood it, the CBA, although Councilwoman Brown said it came in 2019, but that this project was before the CBA. So ex post facto, we now are coming up with the CBA and saying we should apply it back. When I sat through the argument, I don't forget what committee it was, for about an hour and a half, we argued about whether or not, or it was an argument, I didn't participate, whether or not Councilman Michael A. Brown should be part of the sponsorship. Again, of all of the things, I saw that to be the most insignificant thing that should be discussed. Again, a lot of the things we're doing, and I raised it, comes through sometime and only one council person on it. I would suggest that we go ahead and take a vote now to pass it through the declaratory, and then we have a committee meeting and let all whatever is coming up come through on the confirmatory, rather than call for a special meeting. Let's just pass this stage, because as you indicate, it's not over with. We're going to have another meeting anyway to confirm it. So let's set up a committee meeting and let whatever now is being discussed, because I thought it was a WIC problem when I sat there and listened for an hour and a half. I thought that's what the problem was, something about WIC, which I didn't have a problem with WIC, but it seems to have disappeared and other problems have now surfaced. So I think we should go ahead and pass the declaratory and then have a committee meeting in between that and the confirming resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. I will just add, as it relates to the Community Benefits Agreement Ordinance, while the discussions began prior to December 2019 between redevelopment and other economic development officials of the Freeman Wilson administration, the request for a tax abatement certainly followed the existence of this ordinance, which is triggered by the request for tax abatements for projects over a certain amount. I believe it's over $5 million. So I think the CBA is applicable given the order of events. So I just wanted to make sure that that part of it was clear. I want to keep track of where we are. So what we're doing right now is having questions and discussion about the amendment by substitution. Is that correct, Councilman Brewer?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and we're saying can we just review what changes? Because we're not voting on the matter itself, we're just voting on it as amended. Or just voting on the amendment rather. What are the particular changes again, just to keep us on track?
Yeah, Councilman Godwin, the particular changes were the Exhibit A was amended. The particular portion of that was the legal description, wherein it had stated in subsection 1 of Exhibit A, it went from an area of land consisting of 0.645 acres being the Gary Land Company's first subdivision of lots 1 to 9. That used to state 1 to 4. That was the change that had occurred. And then as stated again, a formatting change, meaning like the actual way that the page was configured, just for ease of reading it. So yeah, those were the only substantive or the actual changes that had been made to the ordinance after the committee meeting.
I have two questions as it relates to the legal description. The version that I'm looking at, and I want to make sure it's the same as the version you're referring to, does not have a space between the words subdivision and all. Is that correct?
Subsection 1, I see that.
So there should be a space between those, because that has a different meaning. And I would say, just as a matter of completion, the common address and location for both 701 through 735 Broadway and 700 through 734 Massachusetts should include city, state, and zip. Because it's quite possible that there are some Broadways and Massachusetts streets in other cities and states around the country. But I just would say, as a matter of just being complete, when you're doing the common address, to include city, state, and zip. Okay, so it looks like that's the amendment that is on the table. It's been moved and seconded. We've had an overview on it, and we've had questions and discussions. Are we ready at this point to vote on whether we will amend this ordinance by substitution? I believe we are. Madam Clerk?
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPR 2020-07 is amended by substitution. At this point, we need to take a vote on CPR 2020-07 as amended by substitution. I will reopen, I think appropriately. I don't know if there's any other overview. We should have a broader overview of the totality of the resolution. So we'll go forward with that at this time.
At this time, I would defer to Mr. Dan Bowditch to give maybe a more proper formal overview of the declaratory resolution and an explanation as to the process in passing this ordinance, or sorry, this resolution in relation to the other, the following confirmatory resolution. Dan, are you there?
I am here. I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes.
So the declaratory resolution that has just been considered and discussed, that will now go before it'll go for a preparation of a tax impact for the overlapping taxing units. It will also be scheduled for a public hearing, which needs 10 days notice in a paper that is generally circulated. So if the 10 days, if that can be done within 10 days, it'll either be the next city council meeting or it'll be the subsequent meeting after that next meeting. At that point, the council will be required to hold a public hearing on the matter, as well as hear any remonstrances or support from overlapping taxing units. We'll have to ensure that all the tax implications that are being sent in a statement to the overlapping taxing units are sent via United States Postal Service certified mail to ensure that they receive it. At that point, once the public hearing occurs, the city council may then entertain and consider a confirmatory resolution that basically is a resolution or resolutory statement that you have followed as the council and the city the appropriate process to designate the area identified in the declaratory resolution as an economic revitalization area. Now, once the area is formally designated as and confirmed as an economic revitalization area, the council may then consider the Form SB1 real property that MVAH has submitted to the city. And that's where really the community benefits agreement would be considered as part of the resolution for the Form SB1. That would be a condition of the Form SB1 resolution for consideration. So really, those are the next steps.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other overview from anyone else within the administration as it relates to this?
No, but Mr. President.
Councilwoman Brown?
I agree with Councilman Lay that we could go ahead and pass this pass a declaratory tonight, it has to go back to committee anyway. And then we can have, when we have the other committee meeting, we can talk about the CBA agreement, but I don't think that we ought to hold this, and you said that's $11 million, while we try to decide whether or not we want to do that. I think we can pass this tonight, and then when we go to the next committee meeting, we can make that determination about the CBA agreement.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. Any other questions or discussions among council members?
Mr. President. Oh, go ahead.
Councilman Brewer, the chair of the committee.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Councilwoman Atkins.
No,
Yes.
I defer to Councilman Brewer.
Well, I just want to know, what is the administration position on the CBA? Let's just cut through the chase.
What I can say, Councilman Brewer, is that we have met with the CGCBA. We did so last week, and we had a very spirited discussion about the potential, the potential hiring opportunities and the benefits that are included, the community benefits that are basically baked into the project itself. I know that we have, for the most part, I know that, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the developer, and I think Mr. Schweigerhart should get an opportunity to speak to his perspective of it as well, because of the benefits that are included into this agreement. But one of the things that I did want the council to know is that we have reached out. It does put both the administration, the developer, and I think the CGCBA in an odd position, given the fact that a lot of the plans and a lot of the investment that had been brought to fruition predated the CGCBA. And to Councilman Godwin's point, the abatement hadn't been awarded yet, but as we all know, development takes a very, very, very long time to bring investors to the table, to get plans together. So as far as how the CGBA or CBA is going to apply to this project, it's very, very difficult, to really address that, given the fact that for the most part, everything had been put in place. I think the CBA, not to speak on behalf of the council, the intentions of passing the council or the passage of the CBA ordinance, but it was obviously seemingly an ordinance that was meant to work with developers from the ground up, not after the plans had already been put together, presented, and then ready for for the award of an abatement. So while we are, the administration is obviously open to the idea of community benefits always, we have to obviously look out for the best interest for our city. It is an odd situation to be in. But nevertheless, we have every intention of ensuring that the interests of the community are best served. So,
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Atkins.
I just wanted to, put this for food for thought for the colleagues. So from my stance, it's not just about the CBA ordinance. Prior to the establishment of this ordinance, from my understanding, the city also had a local hiring ordinance that should already be applicable, regardless if there was a CBA executed in December or not. So I don't know if we've even got confirmation that alone will be adhered to. In addition to that, I get, if we just focus on the declaratory portion of the ERA at this point, they're asking for a tax abatement. So we have to look at the big picture versus just passing on and not holding up an $11 million investment. Well, that's true, but we're putting into that investment as well with the tax abatement that they're asking for. So I think that, colleagues should think about all of that now instead of in piecemeal. So that's all I wanted to bring.
Mr. President.
Councilwoman, Councilman Weatherspoon is recognized.
Yes, I received a call last week from AJ, and he asked me if I had any particular questions about this project going forward. And one of the things that I brought to him was that I needed to know exactly what we were getting in return, and as it related to jobs, pertaining to the building of the project, building jobs related to the maintenance of the project. And, he said he would refer me during this council meeting or at any other time back to, the developers. And just wondering, where do we exactly stand? So, with that, I agree with Councilwoman Atkins. Stand in full support of her.
Council
Thank you,
President.
Councilman Weatherspoon. Mr. Bittner is recognized. Is that?
Yes, and after our conversation with Councilman Weatherspoon, I brought that information to Pete with MVH. Some of the questions regarding to, the practices they used last year is in their acquisition of the contractors themselves and the process they went through to trying to list as many qualified local contractors that they possibly could that were held at the Gary Art House, as well as the fact of, is there any opportunity for local hiring specifically for the on-site management or maintenance staff? And, I'll let Pete speak for himself as far as MVH, but, the conversation was that they will be, once they're getting ready to move into operational mode, be looking for local hires. But I'll turn it over to, if the council will allow, turn it over to Pete to discuss their, hiring procedures in order to try and get local hires.
Time, Mr. Developer.
Good evening, everyone. How you doing?
Good evening.
Thanks for giving us some time tonight. Pete Schwigerot with MVH Partners. And we do have some other members of the development team here, our partners and representatives of our general contractor here. So happy to have them interject or add if they have some additional information. Yes, since our last discussion with you, we did go back to committee and discuss the project further. There were a lot of questions that were brought up about the processes we've gone through and the local hiring and our commitments to local hiring. And I'll just summarize those for you. This is a tricky one, and thank you for everyone for at least acknowledging and understanding that we are in a little bit of a tricky situation here, that most of this was conceptualized before the CBA. And in fact, we did submit for the tax abatement, I believe it was last October, so actually before the CBA was created, and with hopes that we were going to be on the agenda last fall and be able to bring this conversation forward then. With that, though, in working through the process, we unfortunately were not able to get on the agenda with the last administration and brought that request back in January. And so as we learned about the CBA, we've tried to address those questions. I believe at this point we've at least answered all the questions asked of us. And yes, we will be doing a substantial local hiring, and that will really involve various levels. First and foremost, temporary construction work. A project of this scale is estimated to generate somewhere in the realm of around 200 full-time temporary construction jobs during the construction period. It's obviously going to vary from time, and I think we mentioned that in the past meetings. That work was bid locally, and bid, I believe it was last October, and bid locally, and our contracting team did a good outreach. We worked with city staff, held public meetings with subcontractors, and offered up opportunity to participate in workshops, answer questions. With that, they went out to bid and did bid the work with the requirements we had at hand at the time. And then from there, we continued to work through process. We finalized our other last piece of funding, which was Federal Home Loan Bank funding through funding through the Federal Home Loan Bank that came through in November, which just left the tax abatement, and that's when we came forward. And so we did find out through the CBA, though, that there were things in the CBA that our bids didn't contemplate. For example, I believe there is a living wage rate identified at $15.50 an hour. That was not part of our bidding. It was just not a number that was even we were aware of at the time. It didn't even technically exist at the time of bidding. We have gone back, or I should say, are in the process of going back to our subcontractors, those that bid, to see if that's something that they could accept. I don't have the answer for that today, but we are hopeful we can make some progress in gaining commitments that might be able to achieve some of these things that the CBA has enacted. And we're doing our best to do so, trying to marry that to an existing bid process that we're hopeful we can still continue. As part of this, we are adhering to Section 3 requirements, and that does require local hiring, and all of our subcontractors would be required to adhere and commit to Section 3. And as they have new hires, they have to work locally. One of the benefits, things that did come out of the CBA meeting last week, is we are learning and finding some new sources for that labor. So our team does intend to work with those their existing sources as well as these new local sources to make sure that we have resources and access to local employees, so that our subcontractors know how and where to go to find support those local hiring needs. So with that, I think we've tried to adhere to as much as we can in the CBA from the local participation, living wage rate perspective. And then from the actual community benefits perspective, we did summarize over $300,000 worth of community benefit that we are incorporating into the development. And these are things that were part of the Moving Forward program, but are being and will be utilized in benefits of not only our residents, which are residents of Gary, but also residents as a whole. Those are, in addition to the affordable housing and some of the commercial services and healthcare services we're going to be able to provide, we are committing to build a $250,000 budget greenhouse that will be fully integrated and operational, and handed over to a local not-for-profit who provides healthy foods in urban farming in the community already. So there are some economic benefits and community benefits already planned into that's $250,000 worth of value. We are doing a car share service. We're working with a group that has a car share deployment in Chicago to bring some car share to site. And yes, they will be located on site and our residents will have access to them. But we do intend in that car share service will be available via app-based systems and available to the community as a whole. Right now, it's a one-car system. We plan to partner with the adjacent commercial property that houses many state and county offices to encourage use and support of the car share system there. And the way the car share system works is as we can increase the usage of the first car, the car share system themselves will bring in second and third cars. So we are hopeful this can be seed planting for a true car share opportunity within Gary. In addition to that, we are going to be doing over $100,000 worth of improvements in the right-of-way, improvements to the alley, pavement, curbs, sidewalk, crosswalks, streetscape. And so residents will be able to, there will be a new bus, rapid transit bus stop and shelters scheduled, erected on Broadway. And so that will total over $100,000. So in total, there's as much as quantifiably $400,000 worth of special features that are being incorporated in this project that will be tremendous benefits to our residents, but also to the community as a whole. These do involve local community partners that do great things in the community already and will help them enhance what they do. So we do think that it's from the community investment value, we are making those investments. And we want to have further meetings and discuss exactly how we make sure those have the most impact. And we're also, as discussed, there are other phases of this development that we do want to start the beginning with community outreach so that we don't run into this challenge late in a closing process. So one thing that, in addition to what I've said there, is we are 100% committed to meeting all the requirements of the community benefits agreement on the future phases as well. Certainly it's much plan and appropriately prepare for those, knowing that going in. So we are hopeful, as we might have some neighborhood meetings to further introduce phase one, that we would also make sure those meetings included what would be very early discussions on phase two, so that we can identify and allow the community to have input on what the community benefits would be that phase generates. So with that, I would say, we are late in the process. We are hopeful you can help us with our schedule and timing a little bit. We do want to work to finalize a scenario that council can be comfortable with and that the CBA committee and board can be comfortable with. I think last week we made great strides in that, and it would be very, very helpful. Every delay is a risk to the project. We do have cliff dates and deadlines. This project has to be built by a certain date, and knowing that this piece of legislation wouldn't prevent the conversation to continue on the confirmatory resolution and the CBA agreement, I'm hopeful that you might be willing to just help us just try to keep schedule. We are trying to coordinate, and since our last council meeting, I've continued to try and coordinate neighborhood meetings. Thus far, we haven't been able to do so, but we are hopeful we can do that. I'm willing to participate, ready to participate. Hopeful those can happen later this month. And if we can get through this meeting, we'll do much greater. We'll have a much better chance of staying near our closing schedule and risking those cliff dates. But at the same time, we want to give you all your time and considerations, and hope we can maybe marry that some way by allowing this to go forward and working really hard between now and when that confirmatory resolution would come back, to making sure we have any other outstanding items buttoned up and everyone comfortable with them.
Thank you, Pete. I just wanted to make a statement, and it kind of is in reference to a theme I'm hearing this evening. And Councilman Brewer raised the question about, whether and or to what extent the administration would be, or now is, committed to our laws. And that seems to be an issue, whether we were talking about towing earlier, or what do we do, throw our hands up if it's not being enforced, or we had a conversation about the fire chief investigation. We don't want to do that if we think there's problems there. And now we're talking about, if we have a community benefits agreement, maybe we'll follow some of it or as much as we can of it. If our laws are going to have any teeth in them at some point, we've got to find a way to ensure that things are being enforced, or there have to be some kind of consequences. And so I just think that, to Pete and to any other developer that's coming, it's not an option to follow the law. And if the administration is not doing it, then we have got to either investigate these matters or look into them, or else we're just bark with no bite. And we might as well close up and go home. Why create ordinances that are not going to be followed, and we're not going to ensure that they be followed? And so while I recognize that the conversation began last year, and that there was an attempt to get on the agenda last year, well, you didn't, unfortunately. And an ordinance was passed. It's not a voluntary matter. It's not an option. It's the law. And so it's important that it be seen not as a add-on, but as a requirement to receive a tax abatement and to continue to get that tax abatement. Because I know that every year, and Councilman Brewer can correct me on this, I believe you have to come back before this committee for a renewal of some kind. If I'm wrong, I certainly would love to be corrected. So we just want to make sure that people understand that our ordinances are not just considerations, they're requirements. And so that's my response to it. Any other council members, questions?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I yield to Councilwoman Atkins.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Just 2 points. So I did want to just let the council know that Pete and I actually had a conversation earlier today where I kind of got some additional information as it relates to the benefit to the community. And so, Pete, if this is incorrect, I know in your commentary you just spoke about a $400,000 benefit to the community. But I just want my colleagues to be clear. Those are benefits that was already embedded into the RFP for the Move Forward program. So those are requirements of the program itself. Those are not CBA ordinance specific requirements, if you will. So just keep in mind of that. And then also, I think to Councilman Godwin's point, how do we, when we're talking about tax abatements going forward, and this is another think piece for the council, what process or what strategy do we have where we even know when it is viable for an entity to come in front of the council to ask for a tax abatement? If something like that exists, if there's some type of parameters that we say, it has to be at least 10 years, whatever, it has to be an investment amount of here. So if there's some type of structure that we have in terms of how we handle future awards or future interactions with developers and entities asking for tax abatements, that's something that we need to look at as a council if it does not exist. How do we even make a decision when we will even entertain, in the future? So I think that I don't know if we have study sessions. I have brought this up to the chairman of the planning committee. This is a sidebar, but just something that we should think about. Like maybe that's something for discussion going forward. How do we handle these particular situations when other developers come up? Because I'm sure phase 2 is going to require a tax abatement, and phase 3 that was spoke of as well. So what are our requirements where we say that, okay, tax abatement is even entertainable at this point? So that's all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Atkins.
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay is recognized.
I think you're mixing not only apples and oranges, you're sort of throwing in watermelons here. You believe something coming on the social media to investigate a complaint that the council itself is turning down. The chairman of the committee is turning it down. So you're saying anytime the council don't agree with you, then it's something wrong. Again, I hate to keep going over the same area. I thought we had solved that early in the meeting. You can submit as a citizen any questions you want to the mayor. You said you were not going to attempt to invoke 36-4-5-3. Anybody can call him on the phone, 88113100, I assume, and then ask for the mayor's office. You may or may not get him. So again, I think these are two different issues entirely. I was told earlier, and again, I don't have anything in writing, I like to read things myself, that this project started ahead of the CBA that now we're arguing about. So I think it's very unfair to ask the mayor, what is he going to do with the CBA where I'm getting blank documents? I still can't figure out why I was sent a blank document and told to destroy all other documents. If anything, Ms. McCready should have sent us the current ordinance, not a blank document and tear the rest of them up that they shouldn't have been sent out. So again, I believe we have time. I think we should honor the gentleman's request. I don't know, and I've never spoken with him, to go forward, and we have time to do this rather than to throw a roadblock into a $11 million project. We went forward with other things tonight, again, on a much smaller scale, because we always have time not to confirm it. We're not doing everything tonight. So my vote is going to be yes, let's proceed, set up a committee meeting, get rid of this investigation of the fire chief. I mean, I guess you can do that on your own. No, the chair said she's not going to do it. And we can't have a committee as a whole either. I disagree with that. So why don't we just go forward on that, and whatever the complaint is, give the mayor I don't even know if he's online. Hopefully he may or may not be. Give him time to very specifically answer that question. I think that's an important question, whether or not he's going to honor that. I mean, we just like, it's going to sound like I'm walking away from it. We got an executive order that came about December the 17th, said change the names of streets. Well, that executive order is not worth probably the paper's written on. I think a decision that important should have been put in ordinance form. I don't care about these other arguments. Should have been put in ordinance form. I think the mayor has an opportunity to reject that executive order. You can put it in another one saying, I don't want to do it, or just simply ignore it. But let's go forward on this project because we don't have that many $11 million projects. And I think the gentleman has indicated they've been in meetings, they will continue to meet, and it is not done tonight. It's just part of the way through this process. And thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. I just want to quickly suggest that my remarks as it related not merely to the fire chief questions, which I will personally submit, but also to towing and to this matter when we talk about whether things will be enforced. I don't want to belabor the point because we've gone way beyond the ordinance. Mine was not substantive. It was just a matter of how we respond to whether or not things or laws or rules are going to actually be enforced by the administration. Obviously, to Councilman Brewer's point, if ultimately the administration has to ensure that the community benefits are actually happening with whoever the person is chosen to do the oversight, we got to make sure that they're doing it. And so my suggestion is we've created an ordinance, a CBA ordinance, and now we're being asked to pass a tax abatement. And as part of that, we're hoping that the CBA will be followed. It's important that we make sure it's followed, and we have a way to do that. That's simply all I was saying, not to rehash an argument that I'm far beyond.
Right. But
any other questions or discussions related to this ordinance? Sure.
Yeah. If you want to investigate the failure of the mayor under 36453 enforcing the tolling ordinance, then that should be done. We should put that in the investigative committee. Let's now investigate, because we have absolutely jurisdiction over this, whether the executive branch is not enforcing that ordinance. That did not seem to be the question. It seemed that there was a breakdown. I don't know if the administration has been given an opportunity to enforce it. And again, I'm getting it piecemeal from individuals.
We're talking about CPR 2020-07. I don't want us to keep going back forward. We have this.
Yeah, but what we're talking about is comments being made in the meeting. You have to stop the other comments to say you can't respond to them. That's all. I'm only responding to his comments.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground. Are there any other questions and discussions as relates to this resolution? And what I want to do now, if no other council members have any questions, I'd like to give Ms. Carolyn McCready, who's with the Community Benefits Agreement Organization, who did meet with the developer, an opportunity briefly to speak about the CBA and about their understanding. I know Dr. Vanessa McLeod with the Urban League is also on, and she's also on that committee. So at this time, I want to give Ms. McCready an opportunity to speak.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. I want to thank you for this opportunity to clear up some really basic, I think, misinformation that may be out there about what the CBA is. The Community Benefits Agreement was organized in order to deal with new construction projects in the city of Gary. Construction. Because we have a lot of vacant ground, we know developers are interested, and so we thought that a community benefits agreement would be very important in ensuring a number of things. Number one, that there would be job training take place in construction, and that there would be local hiring. And local would mean Gary residents, because as everyone on the council knows, we have a very, very high unemployment rate. And we are not training our young people or anyone else to become construction workers because, well, I don't know exactly why that is. I guess there are a number of reasons. But the point is that there are going to be many, many new jobs in this city that pay a very, very good union wage. And it was our determination that our young people deserved an opportunity to get into the trades, to become union members, and to have fine and good careers in those trades. Okay, so that's really the heart of the community benefits agreement is jobs and job training. But the other part, as the Councilman Godwin pointed out, gets triggered, the whole ordinance gets triggered when a developer comes and says, I want a public city-issued subsidy, tax break, land grants, any kind of public money that's going to go to the developer. And what we're saying is that 15% of that total amount should go back to the community. In this case, that would be the 4th district, the people in the impact area of the development. And then the people in the 4th district would decide what that community benefit should be. Now, we don't know right now what that number is because we're not sure of several things in terms of what the public subsidy total amount is. We still are not sure about that, and we certainly don't know what it is if in fact the tax abatement does or does not go through. Also, I just want to make clear that as Councilwoman Atkins said, all of the things that Pete talked about, that, you know, they're nice things, the greenhouse, the bikes, the car service, you know, the healthcare, those are good things, but that's part of their project. That's part of their project. That is not community benefits as described in the ordinance. That is an entirely different thing. An example would be the people in the 4th district might decide that they want to renovate Buffington Park, that might be what the community benefit is, or that they might want to have a clinic built somewhere in the 4th district. So those are the kinds of things that are negotiated out between the developer, our committee, and the people of the 4th district, the people in the impact area, and that would certainly include the councilwoman in that district. So these are basically the parameters of the CBA. And I want to say it's been used very successfully around the country. The Staples Center was the very first facility to be built in California under a CBA. And it was a huge hiring boost to the people in that area. 300 people were trained and got jobs and helped to build the Staples Center when that would never have happened without a CBA. So, and there are many examples, but I just want to say that this is a win-win situation. For the city, it gives the city leverage with developers who have traditionally come to Gary, gotten all kinds of tax breaks, and the city didn't end up with any more jobs, no more job training, and certainly no benefits. So this is an attempt to change the paradigm, to put the people at the table, to negotiate with the developer what's going to happen with local hiring. And I want to absolutely stress that local hiring is not hiring in Northwest Indiana. It is not. It is local hiring in Gary. We have a 40% unemployment rate in Gary. We have to start somewhere to deal with this. And that's why we worked for a whole year getting this ordinance together, and we're very, very proud of it. And we think that this is a partial answer, not the whole answer, but a partial answer to dealing with the economic grief that this city has sustained because of disinvestment and racist policies that have held the city back, and people who come here to exploit our city, to pollute it, and to incinerate garbage. We just don't need any more of that. We need actual construction with jobs that are sustainable. And this is why we are in the fight for this, because it really is a centerpiece for job creation and workforce development. And I know when the council voted 9-0 that that's what they were thinking. So thank you very much for allowing me this time.
Thank you, Mrs. McCready. Just briefly, Dr. Vanessa McLeod with the Urban League, did you have anything you'd like to add? You're muted. Okay.
Thank you,
Yes.
President Godwin, and to all the council members. I believe Carolyn gave a good overview. I just hope that we think about this process, because I want us to work in partnership and in collaboration, with the builders of this project. And I want something, I should say, to advance for our community and for the community itself, the benefits that could come from this. So I think Carolyn gave a good overview. You all have belabored this conversation over an hour. So I won't take up any more of your time, but just to say thank you for what you're doing and listening to us. And hopefully we can work in partnership and collaboration with them in order to hire from within our community, put people to work, provide some job training. So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to all the other councilmen, and to especially Councilwoman Ty Atkins, because it will definitely be reflective in that district, the 4th district. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Vanessa McLeod. Mr. Councilman Lay is recognized.
Yeah, I sort of have three questions here. One, what was the blank document that Ms. McCready sent me and said destroy the other one? Was that an identical copy of the present ordinance that was passed by the council in 2019?
I did receive that email. I believe that was an error.
I'm asking her to respond.
Mrs. McCready, would you like to respond?
Oh, yes, I'd like to respond to that. In fact, when you said I sent you a blank document, I brought it up on my screen, and it's not a blank document, so I don't know what happened, Councilman. But the reason it was unsigned was that when COVID hit, I decided I was going to bring everything down to copies of the signed ordinance, which I got from the clerk's office. I was going to bring down copies to City Hall, but City Hall was closed. So I decided that I would send it out electronically. The copies I asked you to destroy were reiterations. I mean, this ordinance went through a lot of language changes, and this is an exact duplication, and I went through it word by word of the ordinance that was signed by the city clerk on December 17th, 2019. So I'm sorry that you received a blank document. I don't know how that happened. I hope the other council people didn't get a blank document also, but I was not informed that they did.
Okay, I will be more than happy to send you what you emailed to me along with your statement. No, let me complete, please. You sent it, or it appears to have come from you. My second question is, you mentioned something that we attempted to do 50 years ago. You were saying if you train the people under the CBA, and I hope you're correct about this, they will become union members?
That's our hope. Yes, it is.
And how is that? If that's not too long a question to answer, how would that come about? That one I'd like to know.
Well, it has to do with job training and collaboration with the construction unions. We'll be working with the Indiana Plan and the construction trades in general, with the carpenters union, with the drywallers, with the plumbers, with the electricians unions. We want to create a pipeline. Instead of a pipeline to prison, we want to create a pipeline to union membership. And Councilman, I agree. We are really in a rebuilding stage, because we don't have the people right now to be able to even complete our hiring ordinance for the city of Gary, which is 60% of all people on the job, have to be from the city of Gary. We don't have the people. We have to start over. And so one of the community benefits that could come out of this, out of the money that we are giving them, and the percentage that we get back, can be used to train people. Our committee went over to the Career Center and talked with the new director there about helping to reinvent the construction wing of the Gary Career Center, because it's been just destroyed. It's been destroyed, and there's not much you can learn there in terms of what people need to learn in order to become apprentices. So we wanted to bring it up to speed, and we wanted to help do that. What we did was there was an MOU that was signed by the mayor with the participation of Spectacle. We were at the table with Spectacle, wherein they agreed to give us a particular amount of money that would be used for job training. And so then we were told by the mayor, well, you have to become a corporation. So we did. We're now a 501c4. And, you know, we got the $600 together. We became one. We have a bank account, and we're ready to accept the money when we learned that the MOU had been rescinded by the current mayor. So that is also something that we are working on to hopefully reinstate, because we were told by the mayor in a meeting with him in January that there could be a conversation about it, but it wasn't going to be any money that would benefit our committee. It would be simply sent over to the Career Center. So however that works out, however our training center becomes, we need a training center in the trades. All the other cities around us have them. Hammond, Portage, not Lake Station, Sherrillville, they all understand the importance of training young people in the trades. We have lost that importance in Gary, and we think it's important to get it back.
Mr. President, just I do have another question, but let me help you here. If you have a 501c4, it is not deductible to the person to make the contribution. I would suggest you should have been, no, don't say right, you should have been a 501c3. That makes the person who gives you the money, they get a benefit. Under the 4, they do not get a benefit. My question, I'm not sure your answer went directly to my question. Inside of this agreement, and I absolutely believe we need training in Gary. You will never hear me dispute that. Anything that helps this community as a whole. We attempted to we created allies workers over 50 years ago, but we could never get these people into the unions. It sounded as if you were telling the council now you have a mechanism to get them into, let's say, the carpenters union. I'm not sure that's accurate, but I'm not going to ask you to explain it any further. The other thing, how will the project that goes on in the 4th district, I'm a resident of the 4th district. Again, I will yield to Councilwoman Ty Atkins as being the leader of the 4th district. She was elected specifically by that district. How is the determination made by the 4th district residents versus this CBA committee? How does see, I believe the needs of the many outweigh the few and the one. I don't see how. Absolutely. I don't see, well, most people don't even understand this concept. I don't see how the 4th, is it going to be a vote that they want to do something, or will the CBA committee, and the document I received had a lot of members on it, certainly who don't, maybe some of them not only don't stay in the 4th district, I don't believe they stay in the city of Gary. Are they the ones that would determine what is done with the money that comes into the 4th district? How is that
Absolutely done? Not. Absolutely not. And the ordinance spells it out, and I'm sorry that you got a blank sheet of paper electronically, but we went through that, right? But no, absolutely not. The residents who form the committee in the impact area, in this instance it would be the 4th district, they make the decision. We are at the table too, but they make the decision about how that money should be spent in the 4th district.
To the best of my knowledge, there is no structural committee inside the 4th district. Councilwoman Ty Atkins came up with a magnificent plan, but it wasn't structured. When I offered to give it structure, they said they didn't need structure. In other words, I'm not even, well, they could proceed without the structure I was suggesting. And certainly I withdrew it, and I will not attempt to do it again. But it was where, in fact, there would be structure there. and you would be able to hand money to it. I don't even understand how you can hand money to an organization inside the 4th District that's not a 501c3 myself. Or you could be a 501c4, but the person handing the money will get no tax benefit. And I assure you I'm right about this tax question. Thank you, Mr.
Well,
President.
I think, yeah. If I may respond to that just very briefly. The devil is always in the details. This is our first run out, and these are things that we will have to work out. I would imagine that while the residents make the decision, because we have the bank account and we have the legal status to accept money, that we would have the ability to pay for the not to give it to the residents in the impact area to pay for it, but that we would be the designated party to do that. But it would be the decision of the people in the 4th District about how that money would be spent in a particular project.
We is my problem. The we, I don't understand, but that's okay. I know what we means, but that is not the many. That's back to the few. And again, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your explanation. And I'll send you back what you sent me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Councilman Brewer is recognized.
I'm going to be very short. I am aware there's a lot of concerns that's going on here. I will move that we move forward with it, but I will also move that we have committee meetings with the planning committee, with the CBA group, the administration, and possibly the petition at the same time, be involved with this project here, where we can discuss and hammer out these things. A lot of these things that we're dealing with now should not take place during this type of meeting here. This is something that should be inside of a committee meeting. That's why I was trying to take it back, but I don't want to hold up the project. I would like to move it forward, but we can have these meetings in between before the next 21st meeting comes, and hopefully we can have a lot of these things hammered out at that time.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, at this time, just to remind everybody that we're taking a vote on CPR 2020-07, declaratory resolution as amended by substitution. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
All right. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilman Lay.
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams.
Yes.
And President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 8-0, CPR 2020-07, as amended by substitution, passes and is so ordered.
Mr. President, ends pending ordinances and resolutions on third and final reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council pending ordinances and resolutions on second reading.
CPO 2020-30, an ordinance of the Gary Common Council creating the City of Gary Youth Council, sponsored by Linda Barnes Caldwell, Councilwoman of 5th District.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-30 on second reading with a committee hearing set for July the 14th at 5 p.m. and a public Zoom meeting on July 21st at 6 p.m.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilman Lay.
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams.
Yes.
And President Godwin.
Yes.
President, vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-30 passes on second reading, with a committee meeting to be held on July 14th at 5 o'clock p.m. via Zoom and a public hearing on July 21st at 6:00 p.m. via Zoom.
CPO 2020-33, an ordinance revising 2020 appropriations for the Police Department operating budgets, Fund 220, Fund 227, Fund 254, Fund 710, and Fund 725 for the fiscal year beginning January the 1st, 2020, ending December 31st, 2020. Sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Councilwoman Brown?
Mr. President, can I take 2020, 33, 34, 35, and 36? Can I take them all together?
Yes.
Okay, if the clerk will just read all of them together.
CPO 2020-34, an ordinance establishing the JAG grant budgets for the fiscal year 2020, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary. CPO 2020-35, an ordinance revising the STD grant budget for the fiscal year beginning April the 1st, 2020, and ending March 31st, 2021, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary. CPO 2020-36, an ordinance revising the Indiana Department of Corrections grant budget for the fiscal year beginning November the 1st, 2019, ending October 31st, 2020, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown?
I move the CPO 2020, 33, 34, 35, and 36 be passed on second reading with the Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, July 14th at 5:30 p.m. and a public hearing on July 21st.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion? I just have a quick question. Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell, what time is your community meeting on the 14th?
The 14th? Is
Yep.
that the same day?
I think it is. Isn't your community meeting?
Oh, it's at 2 o'clock.
Oh, good. Okay. Gotcha. I just wanted to be sure. All right. Any other questions or discussion? All right. Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-33, 2020-34, 2020-35, and 2020-36 passed on second reading with a committee hearing to be held on Tuesday, July 14th at 5:30 p.m. and a public hearing on Tuesday, July 21st at 6:00 p.m.
Mr. President, ends pending ordinance and resolutions on second reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this point, we will have questions. We'll have the mayor's report and questions.
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay.
it's something I should have mentioned. It'd be very short. The reason we can continue to have these Zoom meetings, I had sent it out to the council, but I didn't say it publicly. The governor has extended his executive order 20-09 under executive order 20-34 until August the 3rd, 2020. So we continue our present operation of the council. That's the only thing I'm going to refer to, the way we're doing it now. So the Zoom meeting on the 21st is proper. The council meeting on the 21st.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilman Lay. And I would just briefly add that I want to thank both Councilman Weatherspoon and Brewer for their work in partnership with our office manager to ensure that our chamber is ready when the time comes. They're designing shields in partnership with the fire department. I want to thank the fire department for their help so that we are being safe when we do inevitably return to in-person meetings. So thank you for raising that point, and I know being on top of it as it relates to Open Door and our compliance, Councilman Lay. All right, at this point, the mayor's report.
No report, sir.
Okay.
I'd like to speak, Mr. Chair, on behalf of the administration, if I may.
Yes, Corporation Counsel is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to revisit your comment made during the discussion on the declaratory resolution, wherein you claimed that the executive branch was not enforcing the ordinances of the city of Gary. And in your comment, you used as an example the towing complaints. And I just have to take exception to that as the chief prosecutor for city ordinances, that the executive branch has indeed enforced those ordinances since the mayor was sworn in and since I've taken office as corporation counsel. Example, point in fact, was at the April 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Board of Public Works. The city attorney had prepared a complaint against S&S Towing for a violation of the city ordinance with respect to towing. After a discussion with Attorney Williams, and if he is still on the line, I'm sure he will attest to this, that we deferred the matter because at the time the Board of Public Works had 2 members present, one of whom was me, and I would have to recuse myself as the corporation counsel and president of the Board of Public Works to hear or to vote on the complaint presented by Mr. Pohl. So we decided to defer that matter until a different date and perhaps work out an arrangement in the interim. But the city attorney was more than prepared to file that complaint against a towing company for violation of an ordinance. On that date, we decided to defer it and deal with it later because of those technical issues. As it relates to the incident where the citizen was unable to obtain their vehicle after getting a release and the towing yard was inaccessible, based upon my information, the executive has not received a complaint from the complainant, has not received the complaint from that citizen. If we were to receive a complaint, it would be dealt with. I believe that that particular individual went straight to their council persons to discuss it. It has not gotten to the executive yet. So my office has not had an opportunity to analyze or process that complaint. So I just wanted the record to be clear on that and not let the record be confused with the administration not enforcing the law pursuant to statute.
Thank you, Attorney McCain, and I want to be clear that I was speaking in response to what Councilman Weatherspoon had stated, and as well as what Councilman Brewer had stated about the enforcement of towing. No member of the public came to me about the issue, and I was making a larger statement about, in any law, right? We have a lot of ordinances, and some may or may not be being enforced, more so than others. And so it was part of a larger comment about what does this body do in the event that a particular ordinance is not being fully enforced. We were also talking about whether or not the administration would enforce the CBA, right, ordinance. So certainly, the point is well taken, and I'm hopeful that the towing committee can meet and work with the administration to figure out a better way, I guess, to make the towing companies comply with our ordinance, because it appears that on its face, right, some of these towing companies publicize that they are not open 24 hours, 7 days a week, and our ordinance requires such. And obviously, we're in privity of contract with those towing companies that publicly say they're not open. So I don't know, that's something to be looked into. If they're not in fact open on Saturday and Sunday, and our ordinance requires them to be open on Saturday and Sunday, then it would seem that whatever contract we have with them has a problem. So that's all I was referring to, and maybe council members Brewer and Weatherspoon might have other things they'd like to highlight as it relates to.
Yes, Mr. President, may I?
Councilman Weatherspoon?
Yeah, Attorney McCain, you will not receive a complaint from the young lady as it relates to that particular issue. That issue was cleared up on that particular day. I simply went to the tow truck, to the towing company, and they released her vehicle. They also waived the fees for that weekend as well. It was just a matter of a conversation that I had with them, expressing my concern for their hours, their working hours, and they agreed that they were in violation. So, again, you will not have a complaint from the young lady as it relates to that. But, what the issue boils down to is, again, the towing companies are not in compliance as it relates to their hours of operation. And that's something that the committee will be looking into, and we will be getting with you on that issue.
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay is recognized.
I have not had an opportunity to talk to Attorney McCain, but I absolutely agree with him. In other words, I certainly can appreciate the authority and power that Councilman Witherspoon possesses. I do not have the power or authority to go to the towing company and to, in any way, tell them, suggest, request that they take certain actions. That's what my issue was in the very beginning, that I did not believe, and he's now cleared it up, I did not believe the administration had received a complaint. It was intercepted by the council. And again, I'm not criticizing Councilman Witherspoon at all. I just simply, if somebody needs that done, don't call me. I can't do that. At least I don't think I can do that. I don't know what my authority would be to do that. Certainly, if the mayor refused to listen, or the administration, I wouldn't have any problem discussing it with them. So I think Attorney McCain cleared up the issue. I believe whatever the problem is has to originate from the executive, or it will appear that they're not attempting to enforce the ordinances, and they are. They didn't appear to know about it. We stopped it. And when I said we, I have to take credit for that. I'm a member of this council. We stopped it. It didn't go forward. It certainly should have went forward, because even if that was corrected for her, that type of complaint should have been sent forward by someone, whether it is in fact Mr. Witherspoon should have sent that forward to Attorney McCain or to the council president, and it goes forward. Somehow it had to go up to the administration for them to take a look at it, as opposed to this committee now setting up a meeting and telling the administration, come to this meeting because there may be a problem, you're not enforcing ordinances. I don't think that's what occurred in this case, and I'm glad Attorney McCain cleared that up. I didn't think they'd ever heard about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lay.
Mr. President.
Councilman Weatherspoon?
Yeah, just for clarity here, when that situation occurred, I reached out to Attorney Williams. Okay, it was not something that I intercepted myself and went in and intervened or anything such as that. Okay, I reached out to Attorney Williams, and the matter was, the young lady was able to get her car.
Mr. Chair.
Attorney Williams is recognized.
Yeah, since we have broached the subject, I think I'm compelled to say this. One, the city, when Mr. Witherspoon reached out to me, he didn't necessarily reach out to me as in my capacity as legal advisor to the council. I happen to represent a towing company that I will not mention because we have a current agreement with the city on a settlement of a case that we would not slander or speak of the settlement, which I believe the city just violated. I do believe they didn't do it intentionally, and I'll accept that, and I hope my client will as well. But to that end, I wanted to be clear. He was aware that I represented the entity, and I just helped facilitate the securing of the car. It had nothing to do with my role as a legal advisor to the council at all. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
Council McCain. And the
Yes,
towing
Councilwoman.
committee. And the towing committee. It may be time to look at the contracts and see when if it's time for them to expire, and look at getting new towing companies. I was on the towing committee when the ordinance was first formed. And, we talked to them about these same issues. So it may be time to advertise for new, just FYI.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman. You would have the administration's full support and cooperation with that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. And I think I totally agree with Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. I mean, if we have contracts that on their face do not comply with our ordinance, they certainly should be corrected at a base level. So thank you, Attorney McCain, for working with us on that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? I guess we have Attorney McCain on the line. We have I believe Mr. Ricard may still be here. Any other questions for the administration?
Mr. President.
Councilman Brewer.
Thank you. Just 2 points there. Let's say congratulations to our new chief, Brian Evans. Like to know if he can attend the next council meeting to give us a brief update on what's going on far inside the city. I know we had quite a few incidents that took place this past weekend, and very alarming. If you don't know what has taken place, I don't want to reiterate them, but very alarming things that took place inside the city. And I just want to know what is his plans, pretty much, not just saying we're going to put police out, but what is actually the plan there. On the west side there, we have a number of lights that's flashing, and well, should be flashing, I should say, where the bulbs are just burned out in the flashing lights now. It's not so much the lights are not working or working like the traffic lights should be working. Even the flashing lights, the bulbs are not working. I have property right there on 21st and Taft there, and just to watch people run through the traffic light, and it's just a tragedy waiting to happen there at 21st and Taft there that needs to be addressed right away by the administration. And several other spots where you just see people just driving all over the city and running lights, running stop signs throughout like it's just normal to do. And that's a problem. And also the health commissioner there, I would like to know if he can join us at our next meeting there and give us a brief update on the COVID, what's taking place. What we're starting to see now, and I've been tuning myself into world news, COVID-19 is not going anywhere. I know it's hot outside and it may not feel like, nothing's going on, but something is going on. And I think it's important for us as elected officials that we continue to keep the public abreast of what's going on with this pandemic that's going on. Even though people are gathering, people are coming to the beach, and it feels like everything is okay, but we all know things are not okay, and this pandemic is still real. So I definitely would like to see if those two can attend our next meeting to update us.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer.
President.
Councilman Williams is recognized.
Councilman Brewer, coming behind you with your statement, I agree with you. I was going to ask the chief of police to be here for next week, the next meeting as well. I had an incident take place in the 6th district at a park, and I am waiting for some resolution from him, as well as from the code enforcement. I was going to speak on that next week. So thank you. I'm hoping for the same thing, because this 4th of July weekend was crazy.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Williams. Councilwoman Atkins.
Just 2 follow-ups. I think during the March meeting, or maybe even prior to, we had a request submitted to Chief of Staff Arlene Colvin, and that request was to get a comprehensive report of all of those businesses within our respective districts that had business licensing. So I wanted to follow up on that request, as it's been a couple of months since we had initially placed that. And then also, if we could also get a report out from Public Works on any work that is currently being done within our city as a whole, and then also anything that they have projected in the pipeline as we hit Q3, Q4 for the rest of the year.
Okay, and I'll get that to you, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Chief Evans is on the line. I know that some of these conversations can be held in the Public Safety Committee, but
Yes.
I wanted to give Chief Evans an opportunity to offer any feedback that he would like to.
Thank you, Council President. Yes,
you.
I'm on the line and I'm available to the council at any time. I will be glad to attend that meeting and the Public Safety Committee to discuss our plans going forward and what has occurred so far as our violence. And you're very right. We did have a very busy weekend. The Gary Police Department responded to 680 calls for service between July 3rd at midnight and July 5th at 12 a.m. And some of those calls were violent, but I will reiterate that we didn't see nowhere near the violence that we saw across state lines in our other communities, and we responded to every call in order. I will be glad to meet with the council members individually or collectively at their convenience.
Thank you, Chief Evans, and I join Councilman Brewer in congratulating you on being our chief. I know you've served as a police officer primarily for years and deputy chief, and you're certainly easy to talk with, and I look forward to working with you. Any other questions or discussions for the administration? I will just add that I did get some complaints about the closure of County Line Road and US 12 where there was rail work going on. I'm hopeful that in the future we can make sure that that information flows down to the community. A lot of our folks some people are still going to work and are in a rush to get places, and there's really only two ways to get in and out of the heart of the Miller area, maybe three if you include Lake Street. So when a vital organ like County Line Road is closed, I think we should really make sure that information gets out and really put out that we should put out some signage, maybe 3 to 4 days in advance, to let folks know that the road will be closed between this date and that date. So just going forward, if the traffic department, whoever's responsible, can work with folks who are doing work to ensure that the public has proper notice so that they can route their journey accordingly. That would be very helpful.
Mr. Chair, may I add something to that?
Yes, yes, sir.
All right, thank you. As the president of the Board of Public Works, we were notified of this closure on the Thursday, I think it was Thursday, July 3rd. This was the last day before the city holiday. Let's see, let me correct myself. Thursday, I believe, was the 2nd.
Right.
July 3rd was that Friday, and the 4th of July was Saturday. So we received notice of this from Norfolk Southern on July 2nd. And our engineer did call the representatives at Norfolk Southern to see whether or not it could be rescheduled in order to accommodate notice for the residents of the 1st District, of which I'm a proud resident.
Absolutely.
And we were told no, it had to be scheduled. And as you are well aware, the railroad is under the federal provinces, so the city has absolutely no authority to tell them when to notify us or when to schedule maintenance. This was the date we was given. We tried to negotiate with them so that we could afford our residents more notice. But unfortunately, that's what we were left with. And the administration immediately tweeted that information as well as posted it on social media, which we have all learned is the quickest way to get information out to people. So we did the best we could under the circumstances.
Absolutely. Thank you, Attorney McCann. It's very, very helpful. And I would just quickly, I would certainly love to join you in whatever we can do to push. We have a lot of rail lines that I think are actually present a hazard to the general public. I mean, we have so many, and I've seen it, I know you've seen it because we live close to each other, so many instances where they will just completely stop, sometimes for minutes. And I've seen it happen for even 30+ minutes. They will stop at intersections, which obviously prevents a public safety concern. So if there's something we can work on together, or some way we can talk to our congressman to really push the Federal Railroad Administration to give us, I think, the respect that I believe they would give some other cities. And whatever we can do, whether it's a resolution, having a meeting with the congressman, I would love to support the administration in that, because I, for a long time, felt that there's going to be an ambulance, there's going to be a fire truck at some point trying to respond to an emergency, and the trains will continue to present an obstacle. But I do thank the administration for your efforts in trying to get the word out as best you could. A lot of us aren't, some of our folks aren't on social media, but that's all we got in a lot of cases. So I really do appreciate it. Councilman Brewer?
But Mr. President, my whole concern, I think we talked about this at the last meeting, that we should get notice first, not a tweet go out to everyone else. What about the council? We are representatives of this community, and we should know whether it was last minute or not. We should get the information out before it went to anyone else. We should have gotten that information. So I would just like to see that we start getting this information before it goes out to the public, so that way we're way ahead of what's happening inside our city.
And I agree with Councilman Brewer, because what happens, of course, people call, text, email, inbox, the 10 different ways you can communicate with me to ask me, why didn't you say something about this, or did you not know about this? And of course, I found out myself driving, headed somewhere, but what'd you say, Councilman Brewer?
Or they're giving you the information.
But they are, right. And so I think that the point is well taken. The best that we can get information about, vital things like that, it would be helpful just for information flow, so that, we're not caught off guard by these actions. All right, any other questions or discussion for the administration? Well, we have had quite a meeting. We're almost at 3 hours. We might set a record. But I want to thank all of the council persons for a very good discussion. I think we had a very spirited discussion about a lot of our ordinances and resolutions, and it's good for the general public to see and know this is what we do. And sometimes it might look like there's conflict, but that's government, that's checks and balances, and that's what it takes to create legislation. And so I know sometimes people might think that we're kind of majoring in the minors, or someone wrote, I think, on social media that we're doing law school. But I think it's important people know that we take our job seriously, and we take our oversight responsibilities seriously. And all of us want to see the best result for the city, which requires accountability and requires questions and sometimes disagreements, which are not meant to be obstructionists, but are meant to move our city forward in a way that is a win-win for everyone, but most importantly, the residents of this community. Are there any other questions or discussions? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
We stand adjourned. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.